Okay. So this stream, why this stream? Where did this come from? Where did this come from? Well, I think this stream is gonna it's gonna really pull together all the areas that I've talked about here on this channel. Right now on this channel, I talk about general topics, culture, current events, money, personal stories. BGS has come over and we've talked about social class and the dating dynamics in the Black community. So I think all that in some way is going to coalesce here in this stream. So this stream is the way it's going to go, guys. I'm going to warn you. I'm going to talk for a while. Hopefully, I don't put you guys to sleep. But this stream is going to it's going to be in two parts. So the first part is going to be my personal thoughts and experiences working with the image guy. I'm doing this so much like an academic, but I am an academic. And then the second part is going to be my 30,000 feet look at this new Kevin Samuels mania, which actually isn't new, as things literally took off with the whole average at best thing that happened last summer during the pandemic. I have a super chat here, which I'm going to acknowledge. This is from Extended Clips. He said, "Good morning and blessings, Dr. Dunbar." Extended Clips, as always, thank you for your continued support and for this $5 cash app. I see the Master Teacher is here. Master Teacher, I appreciate your support as well. Thank you for coming out for this one. I want to get my talking points out of the way so you can at least come up and give some feedback on this as well. BGS is also, he's one of Kevin's most enthusiastic supporters in BGS. I believe actually brought the tip of the spear here to the sphere. So, okay, so I'm going to start with my personal thoughts and experiences with the image guy. And I'm going to try to be as truthful and genuine as possible. So I'm going to start with the question here. I have a bunch of notes that I scribbled down on a notepad in a hotel bar last night. Why would Dr. Dunbar, or as BGS calls me, Dr. Goodbar, why would Dr. Dunbar need to consult with an image consultant like Kevin Samuels? And as I ask that question, I want everyone to keep in mind that I did go to one of his men in training weekends. I did do an hour consultation afterwards. And also keep in mind that people, in this instance, women, they're calling into his show. So people are going to him. So I'm going to start with why Dr. Dunbar would need to, or would feel the need to hire the services of an image consultant. And also to go to something like Men in Training. So I'm going to start with my personal background. Many of you have heard this by now. So this might make your eyes glaze over a little bit, but as you know, I'm from the Nickel City. Some folks call it the Queen City, Buffalo, New York. I consider my background. I consider myself to come from humble beginnings. I come from the east side of Buffalo. Okay, that's mostly, for those of you who haven't been from Buffalo, that's the Black side of town. Lower middle class, upper lower class. Some might call parts of it impoverished. That's my neighborhood right there. That's my mother's street. Nothing. Yeah, that's not comparable to any of the more affluent neighborhoods in Washington D.C. or I think one of the more affluent neighborhoods out in California, BGS, is Baldwin Hills. The east side of Buffalo is not that. So think humble beginnings. My parents split when I was 3. I was raised mostly by my mother. My father got visitation a couple of times a year when I was younger. Most of my uncles moved away, so there was very little male supervision aside from maybe the men at church. My high school basketball coach, I'm writing a book about that. But there were very, very few male figures around, very little male influence. This is me. This is me now. This is me senior year of high school. A teachable kid, a good kid, not a bad looking kid, but because there were no men around, there were several pieces that were missing in terms of transitioning into manhood. Again, I was raised mostly by my mother. It's not a death sentence, but when you're a young boy raised by your mother or raised by a woman, there are going to be consequences for that, and there are going to be things that you're going to have to fill in later on. After attending a PWI for my first year, I attended Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. Go Golden Bulls. This is one of my first times running into social class and starting to recognize that not all members of the ADOS tribe are the same. First year was very, very rough. I stayed over in Liston Hall. We had a lot of street brothers over there. I'm from a very sheltered home, so there were a lot of things that I came crashing into my first year at Johnson C. Smith. You also had the Divine Nine on campus. At any HBCU, you're going to have representation from the Divine Nine. For all the Kappas out there, I realize the Kappas don't have a paddle on here. I pulled this off of Google, so please forgive me for that. So you had multiple types of Black people on that campus. And the people who attended Johnson C. Smith University who are listening to this may be surprised to hear this, but I didn't always feel like I fit in at Johnson C. Smith University at my HBCU. I didn't always feel like I fit in there socially. I excelled as a student, but I didn't always feel like I fit in socially. Because I did excel as a student, I went ahead and I was accepted by the University of Michigan's Department of Pharmacology. That's how I became Dr. Goodbar. That's how I became Dr. Dunbar. 6 long years working in a research lab on ubiquitination and proteasomal degradation. At the end of it, my thesis committee conferred upon me that he's ready for his PhD. They knighted me, and I became Dr. Dunbar. The late Dr. William Brewster Pratt told me afterwards, he said, "Congratulations, War. You're now less than 1% of the total population. So you're rare." But did I feel that way immediately after defending my PhD and going through my thesis defense? Did I feel like less than 1% of the population? Did I feel exceptional? Not necessarily. I hadn't officially started my career yet. I was finishing school and I was broke. And it would be a while before I'll be able to accumulate resources. So at that time, I didn't feel like I was that guy. Hold on for a second, guys. I'm seeing I have a hard connection here, but I'm seeing my antenna thing. Okay, it went away. As I went through this experience, I didn't understand the importance and the seriousness and the value of getting my PhD and becoming Dr. Dunbar. Based upon the family that I came from, the thing was find a job, get stable employment, just get a job, be able to take care of yourself. The implications in terms of social class, the implications in terms of where I fit now in the social strata, no discussion of that for my family, and actually no discussion of that at the University of Michigan. We learned about research, we learned how to think critically, we learned how to do experiments, but there was no discussion about style, about fragrance, about doing nice things. There was no real discussion about socially elevating. So I got my PhD, but I still, in large part, was still that kid from the east side of Buffalo. And that's important because you can get your education. BGS has talked about this. Ron Wills has talked about this. There are those of us who have ascended into the white collar professional class, but we still, in some instances, still reside where we came from. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. In our minds, we still reside there in our minds. So what made me decide to try to learn some things from Kevin, and what made me decide to want to attend one of his MIT events? Well, I don't really remember, and I don't want to make this entire live stream. This is also about me. So I have one picture of Kevin. I'm talking about Kevin, but I don't want to make this entirely about Kevin. I know that sounds kind of weird, but BGS, I don't know when you brought Kevin to the sphere. I started in large part paying attention probably around 2015, 2016. But early on, his thing was the average at best thing. That was recent. Early on, it was about style, fragrance, and Suit Saturday, and going to Suit Supply to get your suits form fitted around your body. It was about Chelsea boots and the types of footwear that men should have in their repertoire, and those kinds of things. Going and eating at nice restaurants. That was his message, I would say, early on, and then it evolved to where it is today. And early on, he was talking to the men, and that's when I started hearing the introduction of the concept of the high value man, and I thought it was cool. And then he started marketing the fact that he wanted to put together a group of men. And I, since moving here to the DMV, the Washington, D.C. area, I will admit that I was a bit of a lone wolf. My dad is like that. So I think I might have gotten some of that. I did not join a fraternity. Even though my dad was a member of a fraternity. That's a different story for a different day. But the point is that I was a bit of a lone wolf. And for a number of years, since being here in the DMV, I had not created a circle or a pack of guys that I could run with. I know some guys at work, and we would occasionally get together for happy hour, but those instances would be few and far in between. And so I saw when he started announcing MIT men in training, I said, okay, you know what? I have a PhD. I should be running with a group of other quote unquote elite guys. So this sounds interesting to me. The first one was in Atlanta, and I was unable to go to that one because of a family conflict. I saw Wayman Brown super chat. I couldn't go to Atlanta. Me and Kevin were emailing back and forth about that one. I couldn't get in there and do it. And then he announced that the next one would be in Dallas. And I said, okay, I'm going to that one. I'm going to read Wayman Brown's super chat here. He has a $5 super chat. And he says, hey, Doc, when you get a chance, what are some differences that you noticed in Black culture experiences between Buffalo and your HBCU and DC experiences? Interesting. Okay. My Black culture experience. So in Buffalo, you have to keep in mind that my family was not plugged into any of the Divine Nine stuff. So Buffalo, the Black community had two Black newspapers, the Challenger and the Criterion. And actually in this blog post right here that I wrote, I do acknowledge that every year there was a cotillion. Shout out to my boy, Terrence Collins. There was a cotillion and there was a debutante ball. And these were announced in the Challenger and the Criterion. But if you weren't plugged into those circles and you didn't know what that was, you don't know what that is. And my family was not plugged into those things. It looked important. Some of the girls who were involved in the debutante ball were classmates at Hutch Tech High School. My buddy who I just mentioned, Terrence, he was in a cotillion. I remember he was bragging about it. I had no idea what a cotillion was. So those elements were there. My family just wasn't plugged into them. And, you know, I wasn't from the streets. My best friend started dibbling and dabbling in the streets. We were going to nightclubs at an early age. We were going to parties. But more of the upper class, Lawrence Otis Graham stuff, we weren't doing that because we weren't plugged into it. And the reason I'm fascinated by the stuff, and that's one of the reasons why I'm fascinated by the stuff, because I started to see this stuff when I went to Johnson C. Smith University. And over on my entertainment and media channel, I've been doing reviews on Code of the Street, which has several elements of the east side of Buffalo in it, though it takes place in Philadelphia. And I also did a review of Our Kind of People by Lawrence Otis Graham. I think these are must reads, especially this one for anybody, depending upon which, especially if you come from one of the lower social economic stratas of Black America, because there is an upper class. They look at the other classes a certain way, and we're not all the same. So Wayman, I think that kind of answers your question. There are just things that when you grow up on the east side of Buffalo, and you're not plugged into those other things, there are things you just don't know. And so Washington, D.C., it's the home of the federal government. It's a white collar city. You have so many college graduates here. You have the government, nonprofits, contractors. You have just a different class of people here, and you have to figure out how to get into certain circles, and you have to figure out how to stay afloat in certain circles. You know, there are affluent churches here. There's the CBC annual conference every year. So there you have all the Greek, a lot of times the Greek conclaves and conventions are here. So there's just so many things that are out there that you might not have knowledge of if you come from a background like mine. I see comments coming in. I want to get through my talking points, so I'm not going to read everything unless I'll stop and read the super chats, but I can't get to everything. So that's why I got interested in MIT, and that's why I kind of gravitated towards what Kevin was doing, because I realized that there were, as I described earlier, there were pieces missing, quote unquote. Fashion was one of those pieces. And I've talked about one of my exes from Miami. And one of the things when we were dating, one of the things we went around and around and around in circles about was my fashion. For those of you who don't know, Miami's kind of like Hollywood East. And there's a in Miami, people image is important. So I understand that that's where she came from. And at that time, I just didn't have an appreciation for image, and I didn't have an appreciation for fashion. And that was very, very important. And as I'll describe, one of the things Kevin tried to teach us was that, you know, people will, the way you present yourself will impact how people treat you. And I'm going to come back to that. Another reason, while I'm still here, another reason why I gravitated towards what Kevin was doing was, yeah, I wasn't winning socially, and in the dating market and those kinds of things. I didn't really know why. I had my PhD, came from a nice, decent home. But shout out to Mamiya Obsidian Ali. This article, I left this article below in the description box. In this classic article, it actually says that it actually discusses, this is from Essence, Abdul Gaines, this is the Essence article. This is entitled, Why is it so hard for Black women to find the love they deserve? Okay. And in this article, they actually talk about how one of the first things that the women surveyed said they deem as important, one of the things they weight heavily is your personal image, a man's size, his height, the way his body looks, the way he dresses, everything. So image matters in this particular dating pool. And Kevin actually said numerous times that you have 7 seconds to make that impression. So this is another reason why I gravitated towards what he was doing, because I realized that I was, deficient in certain areas. And again, your appearance matters. All right. I think I'm going to move on. I felt like I had another thought. I think I'm going to move on from that one. So MIT Dallas. I'm going to try to get through these points relatively quickly because I don't want to